Awesome. Good evening. We want to welcome all of you this afternoon to the UnRuffled Ladies. Once again, we are excited about what the topic is on today. We just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves. Of course, I'm Dr. Gina Lynette, the founder of the UnRuffled Ladies. Of course, God birthed it out of 5 o'clock prayer in the park.
That's right.
In the park. And it's been about 4 or 5 years now that we have been doing the UnRuffled Ladies. It's a platform to be transparent. It's a platform to help you into whatever situation that you might be in or you might be going through. And so today we got a great topic that I'm just really so excited to talk about and to hear about today. Talking about how to handle grief. How to handle grief. We have an awesome speaker with us today, Pastor Ray. And so I want Felicia to just kind of give you just a little history, her bio, to let you know who she is. First of all, I believe she's a woman of God. And so that is the most important thing. Is being a woman of God. And so yeah, we're just excited. And so we just want you to just kind of know a little bit about her and what she's doing, changing lives, I believe, all over the world with the gift that God has given her, talking about how to handle grief. How to handle grief. Now we know that grief comes in different forms, and I'm sure that she's going to be able to give us some nuggets and give us some input on different ways that we grieve. You know, and some people grieve longer than others. Hopefully that she'll be able to even give us some pointers on how to overcome it. You know, because I know there are some people that that may be grieving and don't know how to get out of that rut. So anyway, Felicia is going to just kind of give us a little information on Pastor Ray.
So we just want to welcome you all again. We're so glad to be here. And we just want to just give you background about Pastor Ray Karim. She is a visionary and a thought leader with the gift of words who pours lived experience into her work. And this gift allows her to be the best-selling author, sought-after writer, and speaker. And she is also a 2-time history maker as the first woman, the first woman of color to pastor non-black church in Indianapolis and in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Awesome.
And as the founder of Good Grief Now, it's a 501c3 national full-service grief support organization. Ray has embarked on a journey to transform lives and ignite hope within the hearts of others. Aside from being a champion for grief, Pastor Ray is also committed to ensuring she ignites courage on purpose for purpose.
Awesome.
All right.
I like that, on purpose for purpose. So once again, we just want to welcome you to UnRuffled Ladies. We know UnRuffled means to be confidence, to be balanced, to be at ease, to be confidence, balanced, and at ease. And it's so important for us as women to always be confident in who God created you to be. To be balanced. So many times that we wear so many hats, we don't know how to balance ourselves because we are trying to do everything. And it's not meant for us to do everything. So we have to know how to be balanced. And then be at ease. At ease, you know, getting to know who you are, being confident in who you are, and be at ease. So as I said, this was birthed out of the park, 5 o'clock prayer, and we're just excited about what God is doing. So many lives have already been helped. We want to just welcome you to just come in. Let us know that you are on. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. But let us know that you are with us. If you have any question that you want to ask today, feel free to ask, and that because this is what this platform is all about. You feeling free to say or to ask what you need to ask. Amen. So once again, we welcome you, Pastor Ray.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Pastor Lisa said, I am Ray Karim, founder of Good Grief Now. It is a national 501c3, even though it's based here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I am always excited to talk about grief. What an irony to be excited about something. I don't want to just call it something, but an experience that can leave people feeling very sad, forlorn, like just longing. But it is definitely something that is that brings my heart joy to be able to talk to people about it, to be able to talk about it, to be able to walk alongside people on this journey.
Awesome, awesome. So you want to kind of give us some, just a few nuggets on what causes grief?
Ooh, life.
Life. There you go.
Seriously, right? Because grief is as normal as the air that we breathe. It is as intricate a part of our lives as the very air that we breathe. Like the fact that the four of us have all inhaled and exhaled at different intervals. In those matter of moments, there are at least two people for every breath that we've taken that have grieved or that have begun a process of grieving. Now, that's not a statistic that's on Google, but the way that I have come to experience people grieving, like that's just how quick a person can experience grief. Because grief does not just take place because of death. The definition that I use for grief is that grief is the normal response to loss, change, and I've added to that transition that results in the expression of feelings and emotions. So it's the normal response to loss, change, and transition that results in the expression of feelings and emotions. And the interesting thing about that definition is I did not say human.
That's
I did
good.
not say that it was a human response. I just said it was a normal response because, as we know, animals grieve. And I am of the opinion that all created things, all living things grieve. So trees grieve. We might not know how. We know that the season changed, and so leaves are now falling. I don't know if that's the way that they grieve, right? I am of the opinion that every living thing, every created thing grieves. And so that's one of the interesting parts about the definition is that it's about loss, change, and transition. You're not just going to grieve loss as it concerns a physical loss by way of death. You can grieve a physical loss and the person is still alive. Friendship breakups, right? Romantic breakups, right? Divorce. You can grieve because you a diagnosis from the doctor that you weren't expecting, or you can grieve because there was a possibility that you thought was going to take place, that you were going to be able to live into or live from this possibility, and it did not happen. You can grieve in expectation. I can remember my sister got into a car accident in my 2007 Pontiac G6. It was a coupe. It was a beautiful green color, and I really enjoyed my car. Now, this is not for the people who want to be like, oh, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. We're not going to even do that because a lot of people have things that mean something to them. And just because a thing means something to me does not mean that my heart is like with that thing. So we just going to nip that in the bud now, right? Because we all have our favorite things or things that we enjoy. And so I'll put a pin there into the car accident and talk about this. As we talk about what we grieve, think about people in Florida who experienced the hurricane, right? Yeah. Or people in Canada who experienced wildfires, or whatever those natural disasters are, tornadoes that can sweep through the country. People have mementos. We call them mementos. The favorite cookbook or the favorite purse or like whatever that thing is, you can grieve that. Not because you're so vested in it, right? Like not in that super spiritual way that people try to be, but because we're human and we like things. And when something happens to our things, sometimes we're going to grieve about it and it's okay. So back to my car. My sister was on her way to work. She is an amazing, incredible nurse, and I was watching my nieces at the time. She left for work at about 6:30, had to be there at 7 o'clock. She calls me at about 6:45, very calm, and she's like, "Hey, Ray, just wanted to let you know I've been in a car accident." Huh? What? Are you okay? She was like, "Yes, I'm fine." She said, "But I can't drive the car home because it's leaking." I said, "Okay." So I called my mom. My mom and I go to pick her up. In that moment, she's fine because anybody who's been in a car accident knows that for the first few hours, there's just an adrenaline rush. So you don't feel anything, right?
Right.
So we get her home, like she's fine. A couple of days later, of course, she's feeling soreness, and I get a call because they had to come and tow the car. So I get a call. I was actually pastoring the first church at this time. I'll never forget this call. And the guy's like, "Hello, may I speak to?" He had a real heavy, like, Indiana Southern accent, and that's a different kind of Southern accent than like down home Southern accent.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, "Hello, may I speak to Ray?" And I'm like, "This is she." And he said, "I just wanted to let you know, ma'am, that your car has been totaled."
My God.
Wait a minute, what? He said, "Yes, ma'am." He said the cost that it would take to repair it is more than the cost, more than what you owe on it. So we just have to total it out. I was sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm honest about it, I grieved the loss of my car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. First of all, it was my car. Okay. It was mine. Second of all, it was about to be so mine that I was like 4 or 5 payments away from paying it off. So it was about to be mine. Now, was I grateful that my sister and the other person were not injured? Like they both walked away from the accident. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grieved the loss of my car. You
Wow.
know? So that's a thing, right? Like I can remember having grieved because I got a health diagnosis. I was like, wait. I mean, it was like one thing after the other. There were like 3 pretty heavy diagnoses back to back to back. And I remember sitting in the car crying like, God, this was when I was in Hawaii. How is it that I'm in one of the most beautiful places in the world? And I got to go to the doctor's. The doctor's office like every week for them to draw blood. How? Why?
Yeah.
So we don't just grieve death. We can grieve other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it possible that you can be in a place of grieving and not even know it? Also, we
Absolutely.
have a question too that we want to ask, but is it possible that you can be in a place of grieving and don't even realize that you're grieving?
Yes, ma'am. Because most people only associate grief with tears and sadness, right? But grief shows up in so many other ways. A person can be grieving and be irritable, right? A person can be grieving and find that they either are sleeping more than normal or not sleeping at all. A person can find themselves grieving if they all of a sudden don't want to be around anybody, which coming off the grid for a bit can be okay, but it can also be dangerous because it can lead to isolation. And when a person finds themselves in isolation where you haven't talked to anybody, nobody's had any communication with you within the last 12 to 24 hours, then the walls start closing in, right? Thoughts and emotions are everywhere. A person can be grieving when all of a sudden they want to be around everybody. They don't want to be around themselves or be by themselves. Excuse me. So
Yeah.
grief can definitely show. A person can definitely be grieving, pardon me, and not even realize it.
Awesome. Go ahead.
So, Pastor Ray, one of our viewers, Angela, first of all, she's thanking for the topic because not many people talk about it.
That's right.
Right. And her question was, does grief have an ending?
Okay. So here is my answer to that question. And before I say that, let me say this. I don't consider myself an expert in the sense of like being up here when it comes to grief. I consider myself a person, like I walk alongside people in this life experience called grief because I have experienced it. Now I will add to that this. I have 2 degrees in psychology and I have a certified grief coach. I am a certified grief coach. So, right, like I'm not just going by my experience. I did get some education in this and I'm still being educated in that. Just so people, because sometimes people be like, I know how to fry eggs and they never cracked one a day in your life. You know what I mean? So, so there's some there's a little bit, I know a little bit of what I'm talking about, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I am of the opinion that as long as we breathe, we will grieve. And when I say that, by that, I mean this. Will we always be in active stages of grief or active spaces of grief where we are crying all the time? No, but just because I'm smiling doesn't mean that I'm grieving, if that makes sense, right? Just because you see me out and I'm taking a picture, or just because I'm by myself doesn't mean that I'm grieving. Case in point, yesterday doesn't mean that I'm not grieving. Excuse me. Yesterday on my Facebook page, I posted that I realized I am grieving a lot, right? That it's more than I thought, that it's more than death, that I'm grieving a lot. What is, what can't be, and won't, and what will be. But that I was going to continue to live my life to the fullest. Just because I am grieving, ma'am.
That's really good what you just said. Uh, whether I'm grieving or not, I am going to live my life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, when they get in that mode of grieving, they stop living.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They don't want no friend. They kind of close the blinds down. You stop living. So although I'm grieving, I'm going to live my life to the fullest. So that's really good right there.
I have to. And one of the things that I tell my coaching clients, or in workshops, or even spaces like these, is that, especially when it comes to death, we cannot allow a person's death to overshadow our lives.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can get to a point where we go from living to merely existing. And don't get me wrong, there are times where you don't want to get out of the bed, right? Or there are times where you don't want to get in the bed. You don't even want to go home. You don't want to eat, you don't want to shower, or you don't want to get out of the bathtub, and you eating everything. Like, there are those extremes, right? But we have a responsibility in the midst of our grief to live. And that's not always the easiest thing to hear. It's not always the easiest, quote unquote, pill to swallow. And for some people, they may say, well, it's easier said than done. A lot of people take that statement, easier said than done, and feel like they shut down because it's easier said. But just because it was easy for the words to come out of my mouth doesn't mean that it can't be done. It's just going to take a little bit more oomph to do it, right? It was 6 years, June, that my mother died. And I still walk around my house saying, I need to speak to upper management. I need to know who's controlling the calendar, because as far as I'm concerned, my mama's still supposed to be here, right? Because we got things to do. We got things to talk about. But I wasn't in control of that calendar, right? And so she's not here. But it doesn't mean that because I'm smiling that I'm not grieving, right? And so grief, again, in my opinion, grief is a lifelong experience, but it's what we do with that grief. It's what we do as we're grieving that makes the difference. Real quick, because I know you all probably have some more questions. Do y'all remember Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh? All right. So think about Eeyore. Eeyore was always like this. Oh boy, I'm okay, right? Like, Eeyore was just always down in the dumps. I think Eeyore might have been grieving. I don't have no proof. You know what I mean?
I'm really in agreement with you on that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so Eeyore would have been one of those people who was just constantly in this place of grief. I never recall Eeyore smiling. If he did, it was for 2 seconds and he went right back into that mode. I can even go another further. The Grouch from Sesame Street. He was probably grieving, and he was probably grieving in the sense that he was always angry. Let's think about the Grinch. Everybody knows the Grinch was grieving. And it wasn't until Cindy Lou Who came and like he hated Christmas. All because somebody mistreated him. He grieved that experience. Nobody walked him through that experience, which is why he became the Grinch. Why would you steal Christmas, sir? It's one of the happiest times. Why you gotta go steal? Who hurt you? Right? What loss did you experience? What what changed? What experience did you have in your life where grief for you turned into you being mean to everybody else? So
Yeah.
that just goes to show that there are different facets of grief. And it's not about the fact that we are grieving, it's what we do with it that matters.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's what we do with it that matters.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
That Facebook phrase. It's what you do with it. It's what matters. Yeah.
Exactly. One of our viewers, Andrew, has another question. But before I ask the question, Pastor Ray, I know you said you can do it. You walk alongside those that are grieving as a life coach, pastor, whatever. But my question is, are there any specifics in what inspired you? Like she asked, everybody don't talk about grief. We just kind of got this fixed idea about what grief is. But first, that's what I wanted to ask you. What type of inspiration, fixated you on grief?
My mama died.
Okay. It's just that.
It's just that simple.
It's just that simple.
Yes.
So I'll give you a little bit of my story. May 29, 2017, my 97, I think my granddaddy was 98 years old. He died. About 16 days later, June 14, 2017, my mother, his daughter, died. We literally had their services 14 days apart in June. And in the midst of all of that, and mind you, this is pre-COVID, right? There were people in my community, because I'm a creative, I'm a poet, I do a little background singing, like all that kind of stuff. So there were people in my creative community, there were people in my circle who were also experiencing grief, and I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to gather people in a way that was untraditional. Pastor Lisa, you know this about me. I'm not gonna be in nobody's box.
Right.
She never.
I don't. What is a box? Why do they exist, right? And so even though I know that there are spaces where people kind of, the meetings and spaces where people just kind of sit around and cry about it, we're not gonna cry for too long because we got some living to do. And so what I originally did, Good Grief Now started as a day party, and I'll never forget this. I called a friend of mine and I was like, hey, I want to have a Good Grief Now day party. And he was like, what, Ray? That makes no sense. I know, that's why I want to do it, because I want people to know that you can still live in spite of grief or in the midst of grief. So I did that for about 3 months. We would have a good turnout. And of course, people are like, grief and party, man, what? And so then fast forward to 2020, I was pastoring in Honolulu. My alma mater, Christian Theological Seminary, was hosting some sort of conference. And one of the speakers at the conference was a grief celebrant. Okay, a grief celebrant. And so I don't consider myself going down rabbit holes, because it's just something about that just don't sound right to me. So I was just climbing the ladder of information. And so I'm like, what is a grief celebrant? So a grief celebrant is somebody who tells stories about the person who has passed away. So they are celebrating that person's life. So from there, I found out about grief coaching, and here we are. And I just knew that it was just something that spoke heavily to me. You mean to tell me I could talk about this for a living? I can literally just sit and talk about, and that's what I do. And so for me, it is a matter of peeling back the layers. I really do feel like I am going to champion grief. We talk about everything else. We talk about hair and nails and TV and clothes and the price of gas and the price of food and all those types of things. But you all said it, which is the reason why we're here, is that grief is such a taboo subject. Oh, that person is grieving, we got to leave them alone. No, let's talk about it. Because if we tell the truth of the matter, I'm not the only one grieving. Y'all grieving too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that I want to make grief coffee table conversation, right? And that was literally something I put in my post. I'm going to talk about this grief. It don't mean that I'm sad. It don't mean that I'm always going to be crying, but I'm going to talk about it. And there are other pages that people can follow. They didn't talk about Bruno, but I'm going to talk about this grief. So.
This is really good. And I'm kind of I'm glad she brought up the story about her car and losing her car.
Yeah.
Because now I'm reflecting, and I didn't even know I was grieving.
Yeah.
But just in January of 2022, I totaled my Lexus that was paid off.
Yeah.
See?
And I didn't tell nobody. I didn't share it with nobody. Not that it got totaled. I mean, y'all know, but
Yeah.
what I was feeling inside.
Yeah.
My accomplishment is gone. I worked hard. I paid off my car, and I don't have no more car note, and it's just not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I didn't know I was grieving.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Yep.
grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
gee.
my nieces, we went to their school graduation, and just think about this, right? Like, my nieces graduated from 8th grade, and there were other students around that were in tears. And so their godfather and I are just kind of standing back on the wall, like, man, they are really crying. And then it hit me. They're grieving.
Yeah.
Because they are transitioning from one grade to another, which also means they are transitioning from one school to another, which also means that these people that they have been with from anywhere from the last 3 to the last year, 1 to 3 years, because they may have started in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. Maybe it was their 8th grade year that they met these people and started a community. They're not going to see them no more.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we don't think about that. We don't think about the fact, the ways that children grieve, right? Like,
Oh my God.
I've been sleeping in this crib for 2 years. And now I gotta sleep in my own bed. Yeah, I'm crying. I've been an only child for 4 years. And now you bringing another baby in the house. What do you mean? Make it make sense.
Pinch feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me go ahead and ask the question from our viewer, which we kind of just touched on it. But do we grieve and not know we're grieving until we are triggered? So we just
Yes.
kind of touched on. We don't even know.
No, that's
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like what you just shared just now. You was triggered.
Yes.
With what's already been said, to realize that you was grieving. So you just what you have said today triggered you to make you realize that I'm grieving.
That's what I was going through. But yeah, she just she's asking the question now, and it's like, can you be grieving and not know it until you're triggered?
absolutely.
There you
I
go.
had a-
And
Yeah, I had a moment like that when I first moved back to Indiana. It was around like they always put Christmas stuff out early, so it may have been November. And I'm walking through the mall and I hear Christmas music, but I'm just kind of walking. But I'm like, my whole attitude and mood changed. I'm like, why? And so I'm just walking and I'm like, dang, I really got an attitude out of nowhere. Like, where's this coming from? So I walk into Macy's and it hit me because Macy's has those huge ornaments that they hang, and it was about Christmas. And Christmas was one of my mother's favorite holidays. And when I tell y'all, I wanted to have a whole adult tantrum in there and just pull all them. I wanted to go through there and pull all of them ornaments down. And I was like, no, Ray, like you can't do that. Ain't nobody about to bail you out of jail because you had an adult tantrum. Like, no. And so I went over to like the earring section and I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm triggered by the fact that it's Christmas time and my whole mama ain't here. And so I remember I have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook group called Grievers Welcome. It's a Facebook support group. And I just put in there, I was like, hey, y'all, I'm having a moment. Like, my mama not here and I'm in the store. And what I really want to do is just go and knock all of these gifts off. Like, that was how I wanted to express my grief. Just go through there like a 3-year-old and have a whole tantrum. But I can't do that. And I didn't, thanks be God. But it definitely triggered me. I mean, and then there can be times where there is no particular trigger, if you will. It can just be that the wind blew, or you know what I mean? Just those moments where it's like, oh, wow. Because I can tell y'all in the last 2 weeks, I probably wanted to call my mom at least 3 times. And I think if I was not the person, like if her phone, if I wasn't the person who had her phone, right, and had it turned off, then I probably would have tried.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once again, Facebook friend, we just want to remind you that this is a platform that you can be transparent, and that's exactly what we're doing today. You can always be transparent, and I have found out until you begin to be transparent, your life don't change. There is something about just telling the real truth about yourself, what is going on within you. You know, for so long we was made hush hush and not talk about the real inside of you. As she said, you know, we can walk around and be pretty, but we toe up on the inside. So this is what this platform is all about. Please let us know that you're on. Please put it in the chat box. If you have any question, once again, please let us know. Oh, you can speak.
I just wanted to know, well, we were talking, and the question came up, what not to do when you grieve.
Ooh. What not to do when you grieve? There are a few things that you should not do when you're grieving. The one thing is, again, I named it earlier and I'll name it again, is to be in a place of isolation. Now, there are times where people are just like, I don't want to be bothered. And that's fair. That's right. There's nothing wrong with that. I strongly encourage people, if you find that you are in a place where you don't want to be bothered, there need to be at least 2 people who know where you are and that you are okay every 12 to 24 hours.
That's good. That's good.
And that after about 3 days, you got to come on up out of that, right? After 3 days, true story. I facilitate a grief group here in the city, and one of the young ladies, I hadn't heard from her in about 3 days, and I'm like, now wait, we have a whole chat, and I'm like, has anybody heard from them? They were like, no. And then I think on that 4th or 5th day, she texted me. I said, you know, we were about to pull up, right? Like, these are games that we are not playing, because if I haven't heard from you in 3 days, then I don't know where your mind is, right? I don't know where your thoughts are. And as I don't believe that grief has to be dark. Grief can be a beautiful experience, even in our sadness, right? Because the Psalm tells us, they that sow in tears will reap in joy, right? Weeping endures for a night, joy comes in the morning. Like, there's a beauty to grief if we allow it to be. When you talk about being transformed, because we're being transparent, when we allow ourselves to be transparent with our experience, there is a beauty to grief. The ugly part is the fact that we lost something. The ugly part is the fact that somebody died, or that we have this change that we weren't expecting, or this transition that we weren't expecting, this breakup that we weren't expecting. But grief can be a beautiful thing, just like birth, right? Like, listen, I don't have children, but I'd have been around plenty of women who have. And I know that them labor pains and them contractions and that pushing is not beautiful. But on the other side of that thing is your baby that is, right? So then we have to look at grief in the same way. Grief does not have to be an ugly experience. It doesn't have to be a dark experience. Again, it's a matter of what we do with it.
Yeah.
And so when we are transparent with our grief, then it can be a beautiful experience. So isolation is something that we should not do. We should not isolate ourselves when we are grieving. Anything that we are doing to the extreme, whether that's too much of it or not enough of it, especially for a certain amount of time, is something that we should not be doing when we grieve. There are 2 major things that we should not do when we are grieving. We should not, well, I'll say 3. We should not end a relationship when we're grieving. We should not begin a relationship when we're grieving. We should not make major decisions. And so major decisions will be like starting or quitting a job, right? Like, if you are in a fresh space of grief, and I would say if you're only like, let's say about 6 to 9 weeks out, like, unless you absolutely have to. Some people can't stay in the home, right? They have to move, right? Some people, have to get a new car because the other one was totaled, right? And unless you're in those have to moments. But if it's something where you know that you can wait it out for at least 6 to 9 weeks, I would say wait it out, because you don't want to look back and be like, oh,
Wow.
because you can't take that back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't redo it, if that makes sense.
Wow.
I have 2 questions here, and the first one is, what's the difference between grieving and mourning? What's the difference between grieving and mourning?
It's interesting because one of my coaching clients just asked me that question. So grief is like the inner part, like that's the feelings, like, oh my gosh, you may feel sad, right? But then mourning is the emotions, which is the tears, right? So sadness is how you feel, right? It's the feeling. And then the tears, or like, just kind of looking down or what have you, is the mourning part of it. So grief is the inner, mourning is the outer. It makes me think about Old Testament, when they would be in spaces of mourning, and you would read about sackcloth and ashes, or like them dressed in black, or like fasting for a certain minutes, a certain period of time, because they were in a space of mourning.
Mm. So mourning is the expression of grief.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this next question is almost similar to what we were just talking about. Can you be not know you're grieving until you're triggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is there a possibility that you have all the symptoms of grieving, but you don't know what's wrong? You don't even know why you're grieving.
Yes. And the reason why is because our brains were created to protect us. Right? Like there are parts of our brains that were created. So that means that you've likely suppressed it, right? Because you need to protect yourself, right? Our rib cages protect our hearts, right? Our bones, our skin and bones protect our muscles, right?
Right.
And so there are parts of our brain that will protect us from the memories, that will protect us from the experiences, that will protect us from the thoughts and the feelings. And so you can have what you call the symptoms of grief and not even know that you're grieving or why you're grieving, because your brain is like, yeah, no, we're not going there.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I just had a scripture when you were talking about the part where you were saying about we have to learn how to wait it out. And in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, I'm reading from the Passion Translation. It says in the King James, blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. But in the Passion Translation, it says, what delight comes to you when you wait. When you wait upon the Lord, for you will find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, there's a note on that, and it says that from the Hebrew, it says that's translated from the Hebrew. The Greek is mourn or grieve. The Hebrew word for wait and for mourn is almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that wait it out.
Because a lot of times when we we can find ourselves in spaces. Oh man, Pastor Lisa, why you do that? Because the other part of it is this: we can find ourselves in unnecessary grief, right? We can find ourselves in spaces of unnecessary grief because we did not wait. Right. And so then you moving ahead of time, and now you grieving. It wasn't even a necessary grief that you had to have, because you moved ahead of time. You did not wait. Right. You did not. And the thing about it is, what is that? It's in one of them New Testament scriptures where the Bible say to come boldly to the throne of grace to obtain mercy, right? I believe that we can obtain more than mercy. We can obtain that patience and that courage and that strength that we need to wait, right? And so when we allow ourselves to wait, it keeps us from a space of unnecessary grief, which goes back to what I said, the things that we should not do. Listen, if ain't no need of me jumping into a relationship because my mama just died. It don't make sense. That is what they call in the psychology world, the counseling world, that's called trauma bonding, right? Because I'm looking for somebody to replace what it is that I've lost. So then one day I look at you and I be like, who are you and how did you get here?
Yeah.
I don't need you no more.
Now I'm breaking up because I didn't really want you in the first place. I just needed a replacement for that moment. But if I had just waited that thing out, if I had allowed myself to go ahead and mourn, there it is. Because instead of me allowing myself to express the grief, because we are not always comfortable with our feelings and emotions. Grief does not show up to do us harm. Grief shows up to put us in touch with what we are always too busy for. I don't have time to cry. I ain't got time to be sad. Oh no, yes you do. Do y'all realize that one of the number one reasons for chronic illness is unresolved emotion? Sit with that for a minute.
That was my next question.
Sit with that for a moment. One of the number one causes of chronic illness is unresolved emotions, because we grieve it and we either don't know it or we do know it and we want to go ahead and do what we got to do. We too busy, but you ain't going to be too busy when you get that doctor's bill. You ain't going to be too busy when they got to draw that blood. Cry, scream, holler. As long as you are not intentionally causing harm to yourself, anybody else, no pets, property, or possession, there is no wrong way to grieve. So get that out. It's called emotional constipation. When you do not allow yourself to release those feelings and emotions, you are going to be what I call emotionally constipated. That means that somebody could walk up to you and say, hey, Dr. Ned, and you be like, well, what you want? And all they did was say hi. Because you need to go and cry somewhere. You need to roll down the windows and turn up the music and go ahead and scream. You need to go and tell your children, your spouse, your church members, whomever, hey, I need some time. Because if I don't let this out, I'm going to be a ticking time bomb and there's no telling who is going to be in the way.
Yeah.
Now let me come back because y'all started something. I need to bring it.
You started something.
Oh, this is awesome.
Because this minute
we're talking about how to handle grief.
Yes.
Facebook friends. That's the topic. How to handle grief. How, why, how to handle grief. So
how to handle it.
What, how, and why. Yeah. What?
And the thing about it is, you have to handle grief honestly.
Yes.
And honestly does not always mean you know what's wrong. Honestly don't always mean you know how you feel. Listen, one of the worst things that a person can say to somebody that's grieving is, I know how you feel. No, you don't. You want to know why you don't know how I feel? Because I don't know how I feel. Because it's been 6 years and I still don't know how I feel about the fact that my whole mama is not here. Okay? And I'm still.
My whole mama is gone too. And hey, I feel you. It's been 16 years. But there's time I still grieve behind my mom. You know,
you should.
Me too. I did the same thing. I even when I went home over the Labor Day holiday, I found myself when I went into my house, my home house where I grew up, and I can see how she left everything. And my dad has left everything like my mama left it in a china cabinet. Before she died, I had a similar experience where my cousin had passed away. My mother was at his funeral. 2 weeks later, my mother was gone. And so it's like before she left though, it's like almost like she knew she was leaving. Parent. She cleaned the house. She had set everything in order because she knew people was gonna be coming by. I guess. My dad have yet to change anything that she fixed in the china cabinet, how she decorated or how she wanted it. It's left like that. So when I come home and I see that, my mind, it just automatically triggers her. Like it just feels empty.
Yeah. It's a thing. And so I had a call with somebody this morning. He said, man, I'm about to cry. I said, cry. He said it in love. He said, I hate you so much. Because I'm not going to tell you to stop crying. Okay. I want you to cry. I want you to cry. I want you to scream. If you need to throw something, just let me know so I can duck and dodge. Like whatever you need to do to safely get that out, I'm not going to stop you from doing it.
Yes.
Because the Bible tells us that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came that we would have life and that more abundantly. How can I live an abundant life if I won't allow myself to cry? If I won't allow myself to feel? If I won't allow, because then that means I'm overtaken by grief. And if I'm overtaken by grief, then happiness and joy don't exist for me.
Yeah.
So I'm the person that's going to talk about it. And I might get on some people's nerves about it and they might get annoyed about it. But when I tell you I don't care, I don't. Because society has put us in a position to think that grieving means that there's something wrong with us. Oh, she's so fragile because she's grieving. No, I'm human. And your dog just finished grieving. And the cat is grieving. And the chicken and the goose and the elephant is grieving. We don't bother them. We look at them and we're like, oh, they're grieving. How kind. Be kind to the next person. And stop acting like grief is some disease that's contagious. No, it's an experience that all of us will have until the day we die. Until the day we check up out of here, we gonna grieve. And I'm gonna talk about it.
That's good. That's good. That's really good. Well, the statement was, I can relate to how one gets to the point where they suppress grief and don't even know they're grieving.
Yeah.
You know, simply because when one has been left in a position where you don't even have an option but to be strong. So therefore, you don't give yourself time, like you said. You don't give yourself time to grieve, to cry, to feel the sadness inside and get past all that and get it out. You're constantly trying to keep that persona and that picture of strength, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's also difficult when you have people around you that makes you feel like, oh, that ain't nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Why you crying?
Ooh, please don't tell me who they are. Please don't tell me who they are. Listen, but because it literally like makes me want to like grab people and be like, just go on somewhere and sit down. This ain't your lane. This not your lane. It's coming to you. You're gonna be in this lane. One day, everybody is going to be in a lane where they grieve, right? But this whole idea of us having to be strong needs to be burned and trashed. Trash it. Trash it. Because if I'm strong, then what happens when I do cry? What happens when the Bible tells us?
Pastor Reed, what I see, even in acknowledging your grief, that is what's making you strong. That's what makes you. Whenever you can acknowledge, I'm grieving. You know, it's like what you just said. Instead of putting on this face and pretending, because you're supposed to be so strong and mighty. What really make you strong, the real truth of making you strong, is acknowledge what is going on with you.
And even more, it's what makes you human.
Yes.
So why does it make me feel weak?
Because so then when was the last time you cried?
Yeah.
Right? It's not that it makes you weak. It's that culture has made you think that you're weak.
That's what you've been told.
Yes.
And it just
Yeah.
like we changing this trajectory. We have to. Because the generations before us did not have this opportunity. Right? But as long as my name is Ray Karim and I got inhales and exhales in this body, the generations that come behind us will know that it's okay to cry. For the mothers and the fathers out there who feel like you can't cry in front of your children, yes, you can, and yes, you should. Because for you to allow yourself to express your grief in front of them lets them know that it's okay for them to do the same.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't say that I saw my grandmother cry except for when she was happy. When she was at church. That was the only time. When my uncle died, I don't think I saw my grandmother cry. When my cousin was killed, I don't think I saw my grandmother cry. And this was her oldest son, her oldest daughter's child that she had to watch her bury. I don't think I saw her cry, right? But then we have to take that back. We got to take it back to what it is, to slavery. They couldn't show no emotion. And so we have been programmed to think that, but not on my watch. No, ma'am, no, sir, no way, no how. We gonna cry. We gonna scream. We gonna throw some things. Whatever it is, just let us know when to duck and dodge. Because ain't nobody gonna be able to say. Let me put this out here. My sister and I often joke about this. I think that if we could really do it, we would. We often say we wish we could do my mother's funeral over again. You want to know why? So that we could go ahead and cry and scream and fall all out. Because when we seriously, because we were raised, I love the fact that this is called UnRuffled Ladies. We were raised to just kind of be just, and so we walked on up to the caskets. We might have had one of these numbers, and we had a number to ourselves over there. But we often talk about, child, they was gonna have to lift us up from the ground just for us to Benny Hinn and go back down again, right? We was hoping that the casket was secure because maybe we needed to fall. We just wanted to do the whole movie Black funeral scene and just be like, she got the whole, there was this whole thing, this whole trend on TikTok or something like that a couple of years ago about crying and throwing up. That's what we just wanted to be able to do the thing. Just go ahead and let us hairpins out of just clothes all out of whack. We wanted to, because we don't allow ourselves to do that. And then when people do, we talk about them.
Right.
Yes,
We talk about them being uncouth and that it don't take all that. We don't know what it takes. We don't know what the person laying in that wooden box meant to the person who's still alive. We don't know what that car meant to you. They don't know we don't know what a person went through to get to the healthy place that they were in, only to get a diagnosis that is unfair to them. We don't know what it means for a person to live in one place and then have to move to another place because of a situation that was not in their control. It does take all that. And how dare you tell them that it doesn't?
Yeah.
Jesus never, the only time Jesus told a person to leave was when it came to the man's daughter. He said, y'all get out of here.
Get out. Yeah.
But he didn't tell them to get out of here. He told them to get out of there because he knew what was happening. He didn't say stop crying and get out of here. He just told them to get out. He didn't tell them take your grief someplace else. He just said, y'all got to leave because I got something else to do. He didn't tell them to stop grieving. He didn't tell them to stop crying. He just said, you know how parents do? Go cry in your room. I didn't say you had to stop crying. I love that about my sister. She just said she would just tell her daughters, you can cry, but you got to cry. And if they got out of hand, if they was flailing and then there was a time for them where she knew that it changed and they were just seeking attention, whatever that looked like. She just go cry in your room. You can cry. But you can cry, but you can't cry in here because I got some work. I got something else I got to do. I got hot.
One last question from, she really has some good questions. How do we, you kind of answered it already, but she said, how do we avoid grief?
You can't.
You don't. We don't.
So here's the thing. You can avoid grief. You cannot avoid those experiences. You can't avoid death. You can't avoid loss. You can't avoid change. You can't avoid transition. You can avoid grief by isolating, by stopping yourself from crying, by kind of stifling those feelings. But as sure as my name is Ray Karim, grief will find you.
Oh, yeah.
And grief will tap you on your shoulder and sit you down. Grief will find a way to show up. Grief will either show up in the way you spending money. Grief will show up if you never took a drink a day in your life and now all of a sudden you drinking everything, and I ain't talking about orange juice and water, right? Grief will show up in the way you know what I mean? You've been this cool budgeted person and now you don't know where your money went. Grief will show up if all of a sudden you were a healthy eater and ain't nothing but junk food, and your grief will find a way to show up. So it's best that even though grief is an unwelcome, uninvited guest, it's best that when you know grief is knocking on that door, go ahead and let it have a seat.
Embrace it, yeah. Go ahead and embrace it, yeah.
And that's what
Go ahead and let it have a seat.
Embracing, because I'm an pretty much a little empty nester, except for one that'll be leaving pretty soon. And I had to say, bye to my daughter. She's moved to Tucson, Arizona, married now. And I was trying hard to be strong and not show tears for her, but it was so hard. I mean, for the most part, I probably looked sad or whatever. I just like I really wanted to. As I was trying to stay, strong for her. But she kind of, hugged me, and the last few days she was with me and stuff. And when she left, I thought I was gonna be able to hold it together, and I just let it go.
Good.
And she did the same thing. When she said when she got to Tucson, she boo-hooed too.
Yeah.
Had swollen eyes.
Yeah. And I mean, even in that, it doesn't mean that you're going to cry like that always. But in that moment, that was a moment of grief. You didn't have, your children have been in your house. Now they gone and living. She married, like the whole thing, And it doesn't take away from the celebration of it. It doesn't take away from her happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, Lord, this is another season, and I'm learning to embrace it. I did my initial question though when I realized I was grieving. I said, Lord, how long is this gonna last? Am I gonna be at work boo-hooing, or am I, but I just like, he's like, just embrace it. It's a new season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
I really like what you said at first. Grieve. What was it? Grieve with hope. Grieve with. What did you say? Grieve with.
You're gonna live your fullest. Live to the fullest.
Yes, grieve, live to the fullest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Got
That's
to.
good.
So we have hope in that, because the scripture says we don't sorrow as the world sorrow. So it puts a whole nother spin on it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I'm finding out now. I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that scripture up, because church people, I'm talking to y'all right now. All the church people who take that scripture out of context and make people think that they can't grieve, read the full thing, please. It does not say we do not grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Because church folks, them super spiritual folks, tend to stop right there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you got the issues you got, because you decided that you wasn't going to grieve. Read the whole thing. It says we do not grieve as those who have no hope. It don't say that I can't grieve. I'll never forget that. One of my mother did not want a eulogy, but there was somebody in particular that she wanted to kind of officiate the service. And he walked up to us. He said, just remember that the text does not say we do not grieve. It says we do not grieve as those who do not have hope. And so he was basically reminding us, y'all do what y'all got to do. Now, we was raised by Mama Rose, so we was still prim and proper. But I'm telling you, if we had a redo, y'all was gonna be like, well, somebody get them girls.
Listen, I know time has been well spent, but we've got to get this one in. So is the diagnosis of depression real, or is it a form of grief that is misunderstood?
Both and. I am not a mental health clinician. I do not diagnose anybody with anything. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that it's both. I believe that depression is real, because I believe that mental instability is real. And I believe that that depression can be the result of someone who is grieving, of someone who does not know what to do with that grief, who does not feel comfortable expressing those feelings and emotions. Somebody who feels like, whew.
Mm-hmm.
somebody who feels like they can't.
Uh-oh.
And I know somebody, I know some people in those spaces. And when you have felt like you had to be strong for so long, right? And you don't feel comfortable or safe enough to grieve in front of people, then it goes inward.
Yeah.
Which is why grief is the expression of feelings and emotions, because to express is outward. That's the mourning, right? But if it's only inward, then it is depressed.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
Yeah.
All I know is that I live about 25 minutes from these two ladies, and on my way driving home, I'm gonna do some makeup screaming. I'm gonna do some makeup.
Please do. Yes. Please do.
I got some makeup screaming to do, and I'm doing it today on my way home.
Yes. Kudos to you. Listen, and here's the thing. You gonna do some makeup screaming with your pretty fro and this pretty dress and these pearls and these earrings on, and it's not gonna take away from anybody, or it's not gonna take anything away from who you are as an incredible woman. It means that you are even more of a woman because you are allowing yourself to grieve.
Yeah.
So kudos to you.
Yeah. My eyelashes might come off, but that's all right.
Yes.
That's okay. It's going down today.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. We definitely gonna have to get you back on, because I know there is so much more to say. My time is up, but I just want to encourage all of you on Facebook, just replay this over again, because I'm sure that there is so much information that was given today that you didn't quite hear. So replay it again, and not only replay it, but share it with your friends.
Yes.
Share it with your friends. Know that you know. Just share it, because, like the woman of God said, all of us have some type of grief, whether we know it or not. And so I think it's been very, very good information that has been given to us. It's okay. It's really okay.
Yes, it is.
This is what UnRuffled Ladies is all about. This platform is all about you being transparent, being true to self, being true to self. And for a long, long time, it took me a long time to know how to be true to myself. You know, just owning up of what's going on within me. You know, I had the outside down pat. I know how to put my makeup on. I know how to do my hair. I know how to put the clothes on. But the inside of me was totally up on the floor. So it's being true to self. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And like I say, Pastor Ray, we got to do this one more time.
Let me know. Just let me know
so much more that we need to know.
Just let me know when. If I could, I just want to let people know where they can find me.
Yes.
I am on Facebook and Instagram as Ray Karim, RaeKarim. I also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, Good Grief Now. And yeah, I'm thankful for this opportunity. And listen, we don't talk about Bruno, but we're going to talk about grief. I'm here for it.
Yes. Also, I want to ask the question: do you do kind of like what we're doing now? Let's say if it was a one-on-one.
Oh yeah. I do grief coaching, individual group grief coaching. I actually have 3 groups that I facilitate now. One of them is actually with a church, Emmanuel Baptist Church in San Jose, California. I have a student a high school group that I lead here, as well as a group that I have in partnership with another congregation here in the city. So individual and group grief coaching, grief training for corporations and churches, ministry leaders, workshops. We talking about it, so yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah. So in other words, with your group, can anybody join in with the group, or you have to be? How did that work?
So as far as the groups, so I am. The groups here are local. However, I am about to relaunch at some online groups that I was doing, because I was doing some online sessions on Wednesdays, I think a few months back. So I'll be relaunching those, just because I recognize that there's a need for that as well.
I also think that you have a book, right?
I do.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of mention that and tell us how we can get hold of that book?
I knew this was gonna happen, and I was like, Ray, you need to have a book available. I don't. So the book is called "In Lieu of Flowers: The Do's and Don'ts of Grief Support," because a lot of times we say and do things that are not as great as we should when it comes to people who are grieving. And so that book can be found on Amazon. It's called "In Lieu of Flowers: The Do's and Don'ts of Grief Support."
Okay. Okay. Awesome. 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 I pray that you got that information and go get the book. Go to Amazon and get the book because we know she didn't have time to say everything that she had written in this book. So please, let's support. Let's support. So go to Amazon, buy the book, and then when we come back again, you're gonna have more questions to ask. Wow, because you're gonna find out some more information in that book. So go get the book, Amazon. Okay. Thank you once again for being
Thank
with
you all.
And like I said, we definitely gonna get you back real soon because I'm still like, I want more. I want more. Give me more.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we just say good night to you. I pray that you have a beautiful week. I know that you probably already got so many things on your plate for this week, but I just pray grace that God will give you grace to do everything that you're supposed to do this week.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Facebook.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.